Josie, I understand that you grew up in Erskineville.
That's right, sir. I did.
What year were you born in?
1935.
And what kind of a kid were you?
Naughty.
Yeah?
Naughty. Very naughty. Not too bad, really, I suppose. I grew up with a mum because my father died when I was young at 11, and it was war years when I came to Erskineville. 1940 I came from Maroubra. I was born in Mascot, and my mother's mother lived in the same street, John Street, and my mother's sister and my other auntie, so there was most of our family lived in the one street, and I was one child among of the family that was very ruined, and I had most things that a lot of children in Erskineville didn't have, such as push bike, and you know, I had a lot of things that my father had made for me, and I wasn't an underprivileged child. Like, there were some children that were very underprivileged in the area, but I was never one of those. I had more than most kids, and you know, I have early recollections of Erskineville being a very happy place, you know, loving people, you know, kind, very kind people. Right from the greengrocer right down to your next door neighbour. People cared about one another in the area, you know, everybody knew one another. If you went to the Catholic school, you weren't opposed to playing with the public kids and all that. There was none of that kind of thing, you know. And there were mostly Australians in the area in those days.
You were talking about what a nice neighbourhood it was.
Friendly.
Yes. Did you spend a lot of time with your aunts and grandmother?
Yes, yeah, a lot of time, yes. A lot of time, yes. On family outings, and in those days we went to Clifton Gardens and places like that for picnics. Most of the industry around was shoe trade, and my mother worked in the shoe industry. My grandmother had worked in it, all our family. My father was a tanner before he died at Botany, and he brought the skins home of the unborn calf, and we had all lovely sheep's unborn calf skins through our home, you know. It was quite beautiful. And we rented a little double-storey cottage in John Street, that was 68 John Street, and that was owned by Mr. Polly, who makes candles, and I believe he's still got his factory there. His factory was at the back, and he owned the 3 houses, and he made candles for churches and all that sort of thing. And during the blackouts, you know, during the war, he had a big industry there, and he owned our property, and we never had any trouble. And I think he was a German man, something like that. And there was a lot of industry such as Federal Match. The match company was in Alexandria, so there was a lot of work, a lot of work in the area, a lot of industry.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I've got a half brother and half sister, and they lived at Mascot, but they came over to our place of a weekend. My mother was married before, and before my father, and she had 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl, and they were older than me. I was the youngest of 3, and they came and spent weekends with us, but they lived at Mascot and they went to school at Gardeners Road. But we were still like one family, you know. There was never any difference between us, and they're still, you know, my brother and sister today, and we never use terminology like half sister or half brother. It's all the same mother, so we, yeah, basically. I found that a bit hard to accept as a youngster because I was so spoiled, and when they came over I had to share, and I didn't like that very much. My sister wanting to ride the bike, and my brother wanting to do something else, and I didn't take very kindly to that for a while. But it worked out all right.
Did they live with their father?
Yeah, they lived with their father, yeah.
Hold on, I've got to get this going. Did they live with their father?
Yes, they lived with their father, yeah, and stepmother.
Right.
Stepmother, yeah. And when my sister was 15 or 16, she came home to live with us at Erskineville. She went to work in the shoe trade. And she married a boy from Redfern. And it was just like one big family. Every Saturday night at home we had a party, and it was all family, and like piano, accordion and mouth organs, and everybody played something musical and sang along, but there was never any disharmony. I was never brought up with bad language or quarrelling or that kind of thing. It was a very happy life as a child. But of course I was very devastated when my father died, because I didn't understand what death was, you see, and he was taken suddenly. And I was devastated as a little girl. And he was buried at Botany Cemetery, and I remember I used to ride my bike from Erskineville to Botany every Sunday to the grave and take flowers. And that was part of a ritual in those days, that everybody attended graves on a Sunday, and Botany would be just packed, teeming with people and flower sellers, and they were mostly Aboriginals that sold the flowers in those days there for next to nothing. I don't know where they got them, but Aboriginals lived in those years down on the banks at the lower end of Botany Cemetery in tin sheds, humpies. And there were quite some tribes down there, and they swam naked, and they lived, very in their primitive state. And I used to go down there and watch them, and I was fascinated by the way the Aboriginals lived, But they never hunted me away or said anything. And that was part of the riding out there, was I'd tell my mother I was going to the cemetery, was to get with the Aboriginals and watch them. And there was a lot of snakes and things around Botany Cemetery in those days, rabbits and things like that.
Could this be the 1940s?
Yeah, in 1940, from 47 till about, to say 55. Yeah. And there were quite a few Aboriginals out there, and they had their own little tribes, and they lived and then there was the snake man at La Perouse. He came out every Sunday, and he pulled the snake out the bag and did the tricks with the big snake, which the kids loved, And you went out there to La Perouse on the tram from the railway, I think, out to La Perouse just to see the old snake man, who was a feature out there every Sunday afternoon. And then they had a little kiosk where you had hot jam and cream and scones, and everybody went there. Everybody went out to La Perouse to see the snake man. But when you think of those things, it seems so long ago. But I've got vivid memory. I've got a very good memory, I can remember a lot. Newtown was a beehive of shopping, very, people ate baked rabbits and pig's trotters and things like that in those days. And there was a delicatessen in Newtown called Brownings, and that was famous. And you went up there a Saturday morning or Friday evening, and they had them steaming in the window, and everyone bought them for dinner.
Is this rabbits?
Yeah, rabbits and pig's trotters, hot. And they were in the window with all the steam rising, in the window, and everyone queued up. Yeah, and that was Brownings, and that was there I see it's not there any longer, but it was a beautiful, delicatessen where everything was home cooked. They made their own brawn and pork pies and all sorts of things. And down opposite Erskineville School, the public school.
To Erskineville there. What are your earliest memories of your family at Erskineville?
The earliest memories of my family at Erskineville. The earliest memories I have is the war years. I can remember the air raid siren was on the Rose of Australia Hotel, and the sound came from there, and it was scary and eerie. And we went to school, which is just down from there, the public school, and there was an air raid shelter in the school, and one on the corner of John Street where we lived in Erskineville Road, adjoining Charles Street, which we went to drill in. And sometimes after rain it would be so full of water and rats, and you would have to get into your uniform, school uniform, and you'd come out up to your waist in mud, wet water. And if they sounded the siren, which they sounded off just as drill, you went straight to your own shelter where you were nominated. You were taught to go there. And I used to be so scared, you know, of going into these shelters. Not scared, the war never worried me, but the rats. But you saw all kinds of things in the shelters, you know, floating around.
Like what?
Rubbish and, you know, tin cans and, you know, all sorts of rubbish people threw in there. People used to drink in there and go in there, you know. And they weren't pleasant memories. And
did you have to, did they make you practice, did this air raid siren go
yeah, you
off
had to
very
practice,
often?
yes, yeah, you had practice, drill.
How often?
Or maybe every second day. Every third day, yeah.
Is this just the school kids or the whole?
No, the school children, and then the adults. I don't remember much what the adults did, but I know that you had black paper on the windows at night, so that you couldn't have your lights on after a certain time. Air raid wardens used to go around in tin hats, and they'd knock on your door if you were making a bit of noise or had a light showing, even a candle glimmer, because of the enemy. So every the lights were out. Couldn't have a radio or anything like that.
Why?
You know,
The Japanese would hear you?
yeah, well, they thought, well, that's what they thought it would attract. And so everything was in darkness. You had your dinner, you had a bath, and you went to bed, and you didn't make any noise. And
You'd have a light on inside?
no,
Even with
a
your windows
candle,
black?
yeah, a candle.
You'd have a candle?
A candle or a little lamp. And you had to put that out by, say, 9 o'clock. And if you didn't, the wardens came and knocked on them and you put them out. They were rostered on, they were special men that were... My father wasn't a warden, he was exempt because of his health. But there was a lot of wardens in our street, and I can remember they wore great big army coats and big tin hats, big tin helmets. And they used to go up and down the area, round and round, knocking on doors if they could hear a noise or see a light.
They sound a bit officious.
Well, you know, with see, they were always afraid that the Japanese would get into the harbour, which they did. And I can remember the night the Japanese submarine came into the harbour, and we were taken to a shelter, and it was packed full of people, and the panic and hysteria. And I can remember the conversation that went on between my mum and dad, and it petrified me, was that the Japanese won't take my little girl, I'll shoot you all first. And my father had a revolver and was going to shoot us all before the Japanese if they came. And it was sort of a thing in the district that if a policy that the men would go and have a drink or two. I never saw my dad drunk, but they'd come home and they'd all talk that if the yellow man, it was said in those days, ever took over our country, they would shoot their family first. And you sort of pinned at that happening. that you were going to be shot before the Japanese came. And that's what you lived with, that if they came, your father would shoot you. And it was in our district that's what you did. You shot the children and your wife and then yourself, rather than that the Japanese make slaves of their women and take their children. And that was quite horrific, trying to get to sleep with that on your mind.
Yeah, you wonder if they were going to tell you first.
Yeah, and I saw the revolver a few times. My father had it hidden in the house, and my uncle brought it back from the war, and it was hidden, and it was in my bedroom of all places. And you saw a lot of things that you saw guns, and you saw hand grenades, and I had an uncle in the Air Force, an uncle in the Army, two uncles in the Army, and they all came back from overseas. One was in Changi, and when he came back, I remember him coming off the ship, and he was about 3.5, 4 stone. He was reduced to this little skeleton of a man, and he couldn't sit. It took him, I couldn't tell you how long, I'd be exaggerating, but some time to sit down at a table and eat. He used to sit with his legs up, haunched, eating like Chinese style, because that's all and he was just ribs, his rib cage, and he was very, very sick. And that man was to go along, and many, many years after the war, he was addicted to Dormal, and he committed suicide. He never ever got right after it. He was, war neurosis and alcoholic, and he never ever got well. But I remember the big warships coming in and that, and the soldiers coming off and waiting for a loved one to come, and the excitement, but the sadness in those that loved ones didn't come back. They're my early memories of being happy and sad, happy and sad and frightened. There was a lot of fear at night.
How did you feel when that air raid siren went off? What sort of siren was it?
A screaming, like that. Not like an ambulance, not like what we hear today. It was a piercing. And of course it was posted on the hotel roof, and it sounded everywhere. And of course everyone ran. And they ran for their designated shelter. And everyone wanted to get there quickest. Get there straight away. And you just abandoned everything like abandoning ship, and go. Dropped everything and went out of your bed, and you went, or to a child, you might be sound asleep, and it goes off and you get dragged out. And the people stayed together, and ration coupons were in, and my father did a bit of SP bookmaking, I can say it now. And coupons were exchanged, and we always had plenty of butter, plenty of sugar, plenty of tea, and black marketing was in, and you could buy alcohol, and you could buy tobacco, you could buy petrol. We knew where to get it all, and even I can even remember as a little girl, there was a movie theatre at Newtown called the Hoyts. It was a Hoyt cinema. It's a Burleigh Hall now, and you queued up in a shop opposite for a violet crumble bar, and you could have one once a month. They released them, and the queue would be nearly right along King Street of kids, but they were bought out by the American soldiers and chewing gum, and the American soldiers bought out the chewing gum and the Coca-Cola. And when Coca-Cola came out, I remember paying threepence a bottle, and I thought it was the most wonderful thing I'd ever tasted. But in those days I think it had cocaine or some drugs in it that's been removed now. And every kid was hooked on it. I still see people today walking around with Coca-Cola in their hands, but it seems to be the most popular drink apart from alcohol. But in my day, as I grew older, say about 14, the popular thing to do was to put Begg's powders in Coca-Cola and fizz it up and drink it in your school lunchtime.
Yeah, and how did it make you feel?
Well, I suppose a little bit high, or yeah, and then of course to smoke cigarettes. There was, after the war, there was no shortage. There was so many brands of cigarettes came out, and I smoked from 14. I still smoke, but you know, I had no problem buying them. Money, like as I said, wasn't short in our house. Well, where the children basically got sixpence, which is equivalent to 5 cents today for their lunch, I would get a shilling. So I'd be able to save up for cigarettes. And I smoked a packet of 9, which was 3 threes in those days, and there was 9 in a packet. Well, that lasted me a week, and I think that was 11 pence, less than 10, you know, less than a shilling, 10 cents. But there was a lot of fun. The street games were, you played with a dirt bin in the street, and you had sticks, and you played ball, and that was the wicket, like cricket. And you played on the factory walls. You had tennis rackets. There was certainly no courts in Erskineville. There was no courts. And you played on the factory walls with a good tennis racket, the ball. And I used to go, as I was older, I went to school at Stanmore from Erskineville when I was 12, and that was a domestic girls' high. And there I learned to cook, and I learned shorthand typing, bookkeeping, cooking, and then they had tennis courts, and that down in Livingston Road, Marrickville. So it was like a graduation, but only people who had the money to buy the uniforms could go there. Most of the kids couldn't go. They just didn't have the money. It was a velour hat and a lovely serge tunic and long socks and a tie. And basically, I think out of a whole class, 3 of us went. Yeah, 3 of us had the money for the uniforms.
How did your mother manage that after your father died?
She worked 2 jobs. She worked 2 jobs, yeah. But I can remember coming home doing the cooking from when I was 11. I kept the house. Saturday afternoon I did the washing, and then Sunday I did the ironing before I went to the cemetery. It was hard work. We had to polish on our hands and knees and put the rugs, as I mentioned the rugs before, it was beautiful. And we had very highly polished. And my mother, she's 81 today, and she's very, very clean. And we used to polish our toilet seat, polish the toilet with the old lavender wax. And everything was highly polished, and we had fireplaces, and the hearth, you know, would be painted with Kitchen King, it was called then. It was black and shiny, and you did it over, and then you did it with methylated spirit, and it shone. And that was my job even before I went to school, was to scrub the front veranda, and then you didn't have hoses, get buckets and get it all down and polish the windowsill. And every week you took the curtains down and washed the windows. Not like now, like there weren't Venetian blinds, but it was all hard work, and the kids worked hard. You worked hard. You didn't get pocket money if you didn't work.
Now, you know, your father,
yeah,
where did he work?
Bailey's Tannery at Botany.
And what did he do there?
He was a tanner. He tanned skins.
Right.
Yeah.
And your mother worked as well?
Yeah, she worked in the shoe trade.
What did she do there?
She was a machinist. She was a machinist in the shoe trade, yeah.
Was it usual for the mother to work then?
Yes, was. Yeah.
So,
Well, I'd say 50-50. Not all mothers went to work. My mother went to work basically when my father got sick.
And when did he get sick?
1945. About 2 years before he died.
And that was heart disease?
Yeah, heart disease.
So how was it that your family were better off than the other families around there?
I suppose Mum had good jobs. She was the forelady of a factory. My grandparents, my mother's mother, always seemed very comfortable. She owned a place out at Rosebery. She left Erskineville and she bought a place at Rosebery, Beaconsfield. And she always had a housekeeper. And she always had money. And I suppose my father, being an SP bookmaker, would make more money than anyone in the area, like, you know, with that sort of thing. He had the Saturday afternoon races and I think dogs and whatever was on in those days. But I can remember, you know, the SP bookmaking going on. I used to learn tap, and I learnt ballet, I went to guides, I went to Girls Life Brigade, I went to Brownies, I learnt tennis, you name it. I did everything that the kids at Bellevue Hill did, you know, and my father seen to it that I had the best.
How did he get into the SP bookie business?
Well, there was somebody doing it in the area and he died and he took it over. Somebody that did it before, and he heard about it, and I don't think it cost a lot of money in those days to be SP book to start off.
Did anybody just set up, or was
No, well, it was illegal. It was illegal, highly illegal.
Yeah, so did he have to pay protection to any?
No, not really, because it was in a small scale. We got fined a few times with the Newtown Police for gambling, you know.
Did they ever raid you?
Oh yes, yeah.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, I remember the money we had canisters and they were made of aluminium. And they used to keep all the money in the flour canister and just get it and put it all in. And on the back window, there was a back side lane we had the right premises for SP bookmaking, because beside our home we had a side lane and a back window, which my father had bars put across so that no one could lean in and take the money. So you went up the back lane to put your bets on, and you came to the window with the bars and you passed it through the window. Well, he had a penciler and someone, you know, that wrote the bets for him and himself. And if the police were going to raid, they knew, and they got someone, say like yourself, to be there, and the police would take you and fine you £5 for your first conviction and let you go. But if you had more than 3, I think it was, you went to jail. But my father would always pay you to come and go for him, you know, fine people.
So your father never got fined?
No. Oh, he made sure he didn't get fined, no.
So he would have somebody else there taking the
someone
bets?
to take, someone to go with the police.
Right.
The police would always let you know when they were coming.
Really?
Yeah, and they'd say they're going to raid such and such a date, and he would get, say, you to come and go with them, and then he might give you £5 for going, which was a lot of money. So people were very glad to do it. Yeah.
He must have had to have a bit of capital behind him to pay the bets.
Yeah, well, I suppose he did, because he left me, as I said, he died just a month before I was 12, and he left me a considerable insurance policy, you know, till I was 18, which I was married by then. He left me an insurance policy. I went to a good school. I didn't want for anything. But I can honestly and sincerely say finances weren't discussed very much, you know. Like, I didn't see Mum bring her money home and Dad put his money in. It was just that, like, the other children would love coming to our place at Christmas and that, because we had things they didn't have. They found it amazing what we had, and you know, they come there to eat. Yeah.
So your father, when he got ill, he stopped the SP, or did
he stopped it about a year before he died.
Right. And that's when your mother went to work in the factory?
She went to work just a bit before then, and then she went to work in the bar as well. She worked at the Erskineville Hotel for many years.
Is that after your father died?
Yes, to keep me at school.
What's your father's name? What's your parents?
Joe Hanslow.
Hanslow.
Yeah, Hanslow. But my grandparents were old identities of Mascot. My grandfather's mother lived to be 92, and they lived in McBurney Avenue, Mascot. Maybe 50, 60 years. My grandfather was a carrier. He had horses and carriers. Both of my grandmothers were seen to be quite comfortable, for those days.
Oh gosh, would you say that were your parents religious? Or?
Oh no, definitely not.
And you didn't have to go to church?
My father was agnostic. Yeah, I used to go to a little Sunday school in our street. Yeah, I used to love to go to Sunday school, but it wasn't spoken about much.
Was it Catholic or?
No, it was just non-sectarian, I'd say. It was where all the kids congregated, and they had it 6 weeks. At Christmas time, when the school was on holiday, they put a big marquee up on the end of the street on the paddock, and you went there and you drew and you played games, and the council supplied milk and all that sort of thing. Yeah, it was
Where was it that run that?
I think it was a council thing, but they used to draw about God and that on the blackboard, And I don't know, Mr. Cook was the name of the minister then. He was there for probably 30 years. Him and his son and family, his wife. And
where did this marquee go up? What was the name of the park?
it was on the top of John Street. They used to have, and then down in Erskineville Oval, the council used to run a 6 weeks campaign for the kids with milk and everything, and you went down there for 6 weeks during the holidays.
Summer holidays.
So you wouldn't play on the streets. Yeah, and they had like baseball and everything. Every day was something new. There was a program. It was scheduled out for you for 6 weeks, and you just went down. And that was in Erskineville Oval. And I think that was by the council. And you got a little bottle of milk and you took your sandwiches. Yeah.
Were your parents politically involved?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, my father was involved with the Tribune. He was a communist. And how will I explain it? He always had the Tribune in the house, which was read like the Bible. And I didn't know I wasn't involved. I didn't know, I was too little. But we got things done in our backyard, cemented when everybody else had rough backyards. We had a lovely cement backyard, perfectly done. And I remember the kids saying Josie Hanslow's father got the communists to cement their backyard.
How would that happen?
Well, these men probably were bricklayers or something, and they come in and did it free. And of course I got heaps about the communists coming in, cementing our backyard, So, I used to hear my father talking about communism, and always had the Tribune on the table and contributed to these sort of things. And when he was alive, before the cemetery, and before having to go to the cemetery, he used to take me to the Domain of a Sunday, and it'd be all political debating. And I loved it. I used to listen to the funniest things. And he'd, heckle and go on, and he always was a man that wore a beautiful suit and well dressed. And he would be down the Domain, and in those days there was the Domain Baths, and we'd go and have a swim at the Domain Baths and get our clothes up together, and then go down to the Domain and listen to and the communists always wore a red tie, so you knew them from any other speaker. They, you know, wore their suit and their red tie. So.
Did your mother go to these things?
Oh no.
Why do you say it like that?
Oh, she didn't believe. She was unhappy about it, about him taking me.
Mm-hmm.
She was unhappy about him taking me. She thought it wasn't good for me, but I wanted to go. I loved it. I still love going into the Domain. I still laugh. I used to think it was real fun. And of course you got chips and popcorns and ice creams. But my father was a very well-educated man. He was going to be a doctor and he studied and he got rheumatic fever at 21.
Did he go to Sydney Uni?
I don't know where he went. I don't know the full extent of the story. Pardon me. But I did have some of his diplomas and the depression started and he went to Bailey's and supported his mother because there were 7 children and supported them. A very, very clever man. And I was left a lot of his books and things are mostly medical books, and he's very well read and very, very well. He was a very clever man.
How did you get on with your mother?
Very good. Oh yes.
Good family relationship.
Yes, lovely. Yeah. My mother grieved terribly when my father died. She was only 33. He was 36, and that was sort of the end of the rope for me as a youngster. My childhood, I went from a child into a rebellious, not an adolescent, but I don't know what I turned into after that. I was so rebellious and angry. I was very angry and hurt, in a lot of pain, because I just knew things wouldn't be the same, because he taught me music. He saw that I went to ballet, he saw that I did all these things, and I always looked up to him before Mum. I always went to my father first. We were more like mates, you know, and I grieved terribly for him, and I suppose I would have been in my 40s before I got over it. You know, really in my 40s before I came to grips with the feelings that I had. I was angry, I was bewildered as a youngster. And death, you know, is not part of a little girl's idea of, you know, what's going to happen when you're going along so happily and all of a sudden, it was sudden, it wasn't.
Well, you said you'd been sick for a couple of years.
Yeah, but not sick as in sick, being in bed or anything. I was told Daddy wasn't well and he couldn't go to work, but that's all I was told. But he died suddenly.
You know, talking about your father's political activities, can you remember any campaigns or anything he was involved in?
No, that wasn't revealed to me, no. No.
What sort of discipline was used on you?
Verbal, not.
What would they say?
Oh, well, take your elbows off the table, sit up, don't eat your food so quickly, chew. I used to think I was being nagged at, you know, mostly at the meal table. If I ate too quickly, or we were never allowed to have sauce on our food or spice, you know, anything like that, salt or pepper, and there was no, I don't remember coffee or tea in our home. I remember jugs of water with lemon. And my father, I would say, was at least 30 years before his time, because most of the time we were vegetarian. Most of the time. And there was, in the city, there was one, it was called a PDF store, and it was where they sold, like your health food stores now. And we used to go Saturday morning before the races. We'd go down and buy prunes and dates and figs and nuts, almonds, all that sort of thing, wheat germ, and we'd have that all on our food. And my father was very much into dietary food, you know, fibre and stuff like that, you know.
Did he smoke?
He smoked a pipe or a cigar occasionally. He would roll one now and again, but my mother did. I don't think he smoked a lot. I think he just smoked a pipe occasionally or a cigar. But I didn't see a lot of smoking or a lot of drinking. He made his own beer, and I remember that used to break in the night. The bottles would blow up and bang, you know, in the middle of the night. Of course, you couldn't buy any beer. It was rationed.
Were you expected to contribute to the family in any way?
No.
Well,
never.
after your father died, what happened?
No, I just went to school. The only way I was expected to contribute was to help out in the home. Yeah.
And you did quite a bit of that?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did.
From what age?
From when I was 12. I'd come home and cook or do what I had to do. And
you said when you were little you did the front veranda. Was there anything else like that?
Oh yes, I used to paint the hearth where the fires. I used to love to do that with the black paint, and I never had to do washing but you know, we had to wash our own socks. I had to wash my own socks and undies from a little girl. I was taught to do that when I come home from school, and every night you had a shower. And we had something in our home that I never ever seen. It was very expensive to run. It was called an immerser, and it was like a round coil on a stem and had a plug on it, and you put it in your bath of cold water and you plugged it in, you got a hot bath. And you can imagine what our light bill used to be like. You know, it was so big, enormous. And we used to do that, you know, to have a bath, make sure that, you know, the water, you just popped it in this little immerser and you got a hot bath, like a coil. We did that.
Sounds dangerous.
Well, I don't know, nothing ever happened. We had it for years, you know, this immerser. Yeah.
What I wanted to ask was, after your father died, you then did, you said you did the washing and windows and things. Did you work more?
I did that before. I used to help out before. We were trained. I was trained.
Did you spend quite a bit of time doing sort of
house chore, domestic and the shopping.
Yeah.
And did the shopping while Mum was at work and put the dinner on. Yeah.
Did you have much free time for playing?
Yes. Oh yes, yeah, plenty. Yeah.
What would you do with your friends for fun?
Well, we went to the movies a lot. There was the Enmore movies, two hubs. One Hoyts at Nugent. There were about 5 movie theatres around. So you might go to the movies 3 times a week because you'd see something different at the movies. So you might go with your family. There might be anything up to 14 if you go to the movies. And in the winter you'd take a blanket and a pillow. We used to go in our pyjamas and dressing gowns, slippers.
And you go with your mum and dad?
Yeah, and everybody went to the movies. And it was just, what you did was you'd let each other know what was on at the cinema, and you'd all go. You might meet you and, you know, we'd all go and have a night at the cinema. Yeah, that was, there was that. My grandfather was very interesting because he had racing pigeons, and he had lofts, a tri-level yard at Mascot that overlooked the sandhills, and I used to go out there and watch them train in the pigeons.
On the weekends?
On the weekends, yeah. Did
you often just go off with your friends?
Oh, yes, yeah. We had a, I don't know, I think my father was part owner in it. We had a holiday home down at Bulgo, which is down the south coast, and we used to go down there for holidays. And we also used to go to Bundeena. We'd go across there and we'd have holidays, maybe 4 or 6 weeks over there. But it was called Bonnie Vale, which is just out of Bundeena. We went through a lot of holidays, but we had the place down the south coast, actually Otford, and I think my father and his friend built it, and we went down there a lot. And it was a lot of fishing and swimming and surfing, and yeah, we were never short of holidays.
Gee, sounds like you and your family had a lot of nice times together.
Yeah, well, my grandmother had a place at Woy Woy, and it had a big veranda on the outside which probably half a dozen people could sleep on. And we went up there, and they used to play cards, the adults, nearly all the time, card games for money. But the children, we had a boat with it, a rowing boat, and we were taking fishing and swimming, and that was
at
Woy
Woy. Cousins?
Yeah, all my cousins. Every Christmas we'd go up for 6 weeks. Everybody go on the old steam train and buy oysters and that, and away we'd go. And in those years they used to catch very big flathead and that in the Hawkesbury, and we'd swim and we'd have family. My grandmother had come with us, you know, and we'd have lovely times.
That would have been in the 50s,
yeah,
or 40s?
In the 40s.
In the 40s.
In the 40s, yeah.
When you were at home in the evening, what would the family do in the evening? I mean, this is pre-television days.
Oh, listen to music, listen to the plays on the radio. We had a couple of radios, and we listened to Caltex together and all the plays, and what was popular in those days was the Quiz Kids. We listened to that, and we listened to the hit like the hit parade, you know, and see who was popular. And my father played a lot of classical music, and we used to listen to 2FC, which played a lot of the classics, which I still love the classics. Most of my music is classics. And I learnt the banjo mandolin at home off my dad. And I also went to school at the Beresford School of Music and learnt music. But once my father died, I wasn't interested. I lost basically interest in everything, dancing, music, everything. Then in about 1950, Surreyville was very popular down in City Road. In City Road, which is down near the university, there was a big dance hall down there, and that was called Surreyville. Well, it was noted to have the best dance floor. Of course, it was on springs, so it was jitterbug, jive, all that. So I suppose as I was older, I might have gone 3 times a week there. My first husband and I weren't married. We used to go there and dance, and everybody, it was the rock and roll jitterbug era, so everyone was into that by then. So that was good.
How did the war affect your father and mother?
Didn't seem to affect them much at all, I don't think. They didn't lose anybody. Everybody came back, were survivors of the war. My father's brothers, and my grandmother, who I said lived to be 92, was the stalwart of the family. She kept the family together, and everyone went to her place, and she made sure that everything was all right. As long as you had her, you were safe. You know, she was one of those sort of nurturing people that everyone went home to her place.
And what about you? You spoke about the fear. Did it affect you in any other way?
No. I think once it was over, and maybe the memories lingered on for a few years, but I couldn't say after it I went to bed scared or anything like that. I mean, once it was over, there were such celebrations and that it was soon forgotten in my mind. It wasn't a memory that lingered on.
What kind of house did you live in?
Double-storey brick.
Big?
No, not really. 2 bedrooms, lounge room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom, laundry, And no, it wasn't big. It wasn't big.
And you owned it or rented it?
No, we rented it. We rented it. Yeah, £1.76 a week.
Mm.
And that would have gone on for probably 37 years. My mother rented that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, talking about your friends, can you remember any adventures that you had with your friends?
What adventures did I have with my friends?
Did you run far from home?
No, I wasn't that kind of kid. I always liked to come home. I felt safe at home. I felt a lot of love and nurturing at home. I used to like to go out, but I used to like to come back. I never ate at other people's places, or I was very shy, very shy. I wouldn't take an invitation to go to anyone's home to eat, only my grandmother's. I was very shy.
Mm. What games did you play with your friends?
Oh, well, we used to have a game of tennis on the wall. We all had bikes. By the time the money became a bit excessive, or they went to work, they bought bikes. I had a bike from a very early age, from about 10, I suppose. I had a bike, a new bike, a speedster bike, which cost a lot of money. I had the flashiest bike in the area.
You weren't worried about it being stolen?
No, nobody stole anything, no. No, you just left it anywhere and everyone knew it was mine. No.
Were there places that you were not allowed to go?
Yes, we weren't allowed to go to Glebe. I never ever went to Glebe till I was an adult. Didn't know where Glebe was, no.
Why?
Don't ask me. You didn't go to Glebe. You could go to Chippendale. You couldn't go to Glebe. You didn't go to Redfern.
Why?
I think because the Aboriginals. Because it was wild. Caroline Street, Neverly Street.
Were there a lot of Aboriginals living there in the 40s?
Yeah. Oh, well, can't remember much, but you were told that you didn't go there. And we had to go to Redfern to go to my grandmother's house at Mascot. You got the tram from there, from Redfern. You went out there, and you just didn't go to Redfern. You only went there to the station, and the first thing that I ever knew about anything tragic was the murder of the little girl in Newtown Cemetery. It was Joe Norris, and that was about 1946. I know my father was alive, and her photo was on the stations of wanted, you know. They found her body in Newtown Cemetery, so we were very much warned to keep away from places like that, and that was the first murder I'd ever heard of. Of course, there weren't murders like there are now, every minute of every day, and it was the first one I was aware of, and so we were told not to go around that area, which is at St Stephen's Church at the cemetery at Newtown. You didn't play around there. But we used to go to places like Waverley Cemetery and play, and we were taken to the Gap. Now the Gap, it might sound funny taken there for an outing, but you didn't hear of people jumping over it. You went out there for afternoon tea.
Where would you have the afternoon tea?
At the tea house there.
Oh.
And you went to the gardens a lot, the botanical gardens with your friends, and you played.
As a young child, you would go with your friends?
Yeah,
like a 10-year-old?
Yeah, to the botanical gardens and play among the trees and hide. Play hide and seek and that.
Would you ride your bike, Steve?
Sometimes, or get the bus from Erskineville. There was a 300 bus that went and took you all over town. We'd go to the art gallery and we'd go to the museum. Oh yeah, Sunday. Always for a swim out to Bronte. That was our favourite swimming place, was Bronte, and in those days they had Coogee Aquarium going, which was a great big luxurious pool at Coogee, and they had Wiley's Baths, which was a rock pool. So you could go out to the rock pool and you could go to the aquarium, and that was, or you could go over to North Sydney to the Olympic pool, which the kids just got on the train and went over to North Sydney from when we were about 10 or 11.
Did you go to Luna Park?
Yeah, went to Luna Park a lot, yeah. Went there Saturday night, they had a dance there.
What about when you were about a kid? When you were
No, you went with your family. You weren't allowed to go on your own, no.
Not to Luna Park?
No, because sailors used to go there during the war and they'd be drunk.
Right.
And you weren't allowed, no, you weren't allowed to go there.
But you could go to Bronte Beach and the
Yeah, that's right, yeah, you were quite safe. You were quite safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Who were some of these friends? Tell us their names.
Faye Lockie, I still hear from her. I rang her a fortnight ago. She lives out of Parramatta, North Parramatta. Dawn McDermott, she's got her husband's what do you call it? They've got a shop out in Bunnerong Road, Matraville. He's a monumental mason. We all went to school together and we're still friends. I've got friends, I'm 59 in December, and I've got friends I've had since I'm 5. We're all still friends. And we've all walked different roads of life, different businesses, different, you know, but we've all come from the one area and they've all been prosperous, all been pretty prosperous. Yeah.
Were there any people you had to avoid when you were a kid?
No.
What was school like for you?
I breezed through school until my father died, and then I didn't like it and I lost interest.
Well, how did the teachers treat the kids there?
Oh, pretty good. We had
What school did you go to?
Erskineville from a little one, from 5 till I was 11, and then I went to Stanmore.
What was the school at Stanmore?
That was a domestic, girls' domestic. That's the Stanmore station in Cambridge Street. It was only girls only there then. And that was very good. They had the same headmistress at Erskineville School. Her name was Lucy Woodcock. Oh, she must have been there for 30 odd years, I suppose. She was there till she was an old lady. And she ruled the girls with an iron rod, but she was very fair, very fair. But there was no beatings or nothing like that, no cruelty.
Either at home or at school, did you have any sex education?
No.
What about when you would have been ready to menstruate? Did your mother talk to you?
No. School did. Stanmore School. What we had was a little less class for half an hour of a Wednesday, and if you had any questions you wrote them and put them in a box, and this teacher answered them. So, you know, and if you were too afraid to ask the questions, well, you didn't get the answers. But it was all whispered, you know, you heard it whispered from one kid to the other.
So you learnt from other kids?
You learned from the kids, yeah.
So if you're going to describe the neighbourhood of Erskineville in the 40s, what would you say?
I loved it.
Was it mostly residential, or was it a mixed sort of neighbourhood?
Mixed neighbourhood. Nearly all rented properties, premises. Little cottages, double-storey, triple.
Where did most people work?
In the factories around Alexandria, Mascot, Newtown. It was a big industrial area. There were Slasingers that made the tennis rackets. They were in Alexandria. Federal made all the matches. They were in Alexandria. And every second factory was a shoe factory. Of course, they didn't have the imports that were Taiwanese, and they made all their shoes, you know.
What smells can you remember?
Smells. Well, I remember at Botany the tannery, the leather. You could smell that. And if you went out further, you could smell the wool. The wool stores were out there. And you could smell tallow. You could smell tallow, but you had to go to Botany to get those smells. None in Erskineville.
Well, what sort of smells were in Erskineville?
None that I remember.
Okay.
No.
What sounds do you particularly remember?
Sounds. No, nothing. No sounds really. Maybe. Well, the only thing that I'm really familiar with, my auntie lived next door, and if she wanted us, she'd tap a spoon on the wall, and we'd go in. And if we wanted her, we'd tap on the wall, and we knew we wanted each other, and we'd go into their place. But it wasn't a noisy screaming, and well, there weren't cars around like there are now. No one had garages or anything like that.
Where did most people shop?
Well, they went to Newtown.
In little specialty stores, was it?
No, they had a Woolworths, and they had a Selfridges in those days, and a Coles. Two big shops. They had what they called ham and beef shops, they're now called delicatessens. I mentioned Brownings. They had a lot of competition in butcher shops. They had big Newtown post office, where there's still there today, there's a big clock on the top, and people used to set their watches by the Newtown post office clock because it was always right. I don't know who was the timekeeper, but you always, if you went up, you always looked at your watch and set it by the Newtown post office. There was a good post office at Erskineville, and you could get basically everything. There was one butcher on Erskineville Road that was there for years and years. And as soon as you had your baby and took it in to see him, everyone took their babies in to see him. And he wrapped the sausage up in white paper and put it in the pram. The baby got a sausage. And everybody's baby went to the butcher's. Yeah.
Did you know all the shopkeepers?
All the shopkeepers, yeah. Well, they were there so long.
They would be friends.
Oh, they were friends, yeah. And if you wanted anything, people that didn't have the money, they'd say, "We'll pay it next week," or everybody ran accounts. There was a market at Newtown too, where Newtown Station is, Friday night. And you went up there and got veggies and all that, like a Paddy's. And it was Friday night. And I think Saturday morning. And the tram depot was there too. And a lot of people got off the tram and came from the quay.
Were the shops open at night?
Yeah, it's Friday night. Some of them were, yeah. Some of them weren't. Not all. Your little corner shops could stay open till all hours. There was lots of little corner shops in those days, which have closed now, sadly. There are lots of little. Every corner had a shop, a corner store that ran credit books, you know, for their local customers.
What's your happiest memory?
Happiest memory. Oh, gee, in my life.
No, as a child.
Oh, as a child. I think my happiest memory was always Christmas. It was always I got so many things, you know. It was so indulgent, you know. I think that I just used to look forward from one Christmas to the other.
What about birthdays? Were they big?
Well, my birthday's at Christmas, 2 days after. So we used to have the party on Christmas Day. Half the table set for the birthday cake and half for Christmas. And my friends used to set up one half of the table and family at the other. So we had it all in one. So that was really a big day. It went all day sort of thing. And my grandfather, when he was alive, used to go to the market and get chooks. and cut their heads off, and we used to have chicken when no one had it. He used to dress them himself, you know, and have poultry. So kids used to think it was just great, you know, having chicken. And
did you notice much poverty in the area, like at your friends' houses when you went there?
so.
Well, what would you see?
Well, just for instance, I'm reluctant to mention names in this case. I'd rather keep it anonymous, but I had a little friend who I'd grown up with. She's very prosperous now, I believe, but she had an alcoholic mum and dad, and they lived in a poverty-stricken house in Erskineville, and it was empty. They'd got rid of all the furniture, they'd sold it for alcohol, and she had a little brother, and they slept on the floor in army overcoats. And down the road used to be an Italian family that had big card games, and they used to get a jam jar, and they used to put all their cigarette butts from the card game. They were quite a wealthy Italian family, and they used to send it up to them, and they used to roll them up and smoke them, and there'd be winos in there, and there might be 6 or 8 all sleeping on these empty boards. And this little girlfriend of mine, my mother had a dressmaker's dummy, and she would make me an outfit and make my friend an outfit the same and hang it in my wardrobe, so that when she came up of a weekend she could get dressed the same as me, and Mum would shampoo her hair, and she had a toothbrush and that, and do her up and send her to the movies with me and that. When she'd come back, she'd hang them back in the wardrobe and put her old clothes on. And she'd come at Christmas, and they would never have any food in the house, maybe a bit of stale bread, and Mum would make stuff for her and little brother, cake, and maybe a rabbit, cook a rabbit for her to take home or something, feed her and little brother, with the instructions not to give it to her parents, because they'd take it off them and give it to their friends that were drinking and not give them any. And she went to school with me, and I never seen such poverty in all my life. I don't remember, maybe there was an old bed, or the stove didn't work and no one seemed to bath. I don't remember bathtubs, and they were forever had the lights off and the gas off, and that was the only thing that I ever came across in my life that was to that degree.
Most other people weren't that badly.
Oh no, never. There were some very comfortable people there. There were Italian families that had magnificent homes, magnificent, and they were tied up with fruit shops. They were tied up in those days with fruit shops.
Were there many? Different ethnic groups around that area?
No.
Can you remember any big events in the area?
Big events? Events. Yeah, there was, right next to where we lived, there was a factory called Armstrong Brothers. And it was a cabinet carpentry joiner. Very big factory, very large. It made counters and that for David Jones, all shop fittings. And it caught fire one night, and we were evacuated in the middle of the night. And the fire, I think, went for about 2 days. And we were out, you know, with all our furnishings and everything out in the street. And my sister was getting married at the time, and she had, we'll say, £300 for a wedding, and she gave it to a stranger that was in the crowd observing the fire to hold while she went and ran back and got something. And the next day they brought it back. Somebody brought it back, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what it was like, you know. They said, you gave us this last night. In her fear and panic, she gave us £300 to someone to mine that she didn't even know. They brought it back the next day. Yeah. But that was, there were ambulances and there were fire brigades. Well, that burnt because it was all timber and it was huge. Well, we were evacuated for about 2 days.
You mentioned to me once about the Worth Circus.
Worth Circus?
Yes, did that go there?
Worth Circus was always down in Exhibition Park, down in Central.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we didn't have a Worth Circus in it and come to Erskineville.
Did you ever go and see them?
Oh yeah, many a times. Yeah, we used to go in the school holidays.
Right.
They mostly came in school holidays.
And you didn't mention about animals being in the area, circus animals around?
No.
I must be thinking of somebody else.
No, must have been somebody else.
Sorry.
No.
Can you remember any local characters?
Oh God, there's plenty. Yeah, there's a lady down there that's still alive, and she lived in the flats at Erskineville, the housing commission that were built many years ago, and she had quite a big family, and her husband shot her in the arm, and she had a crippled arm, but she always was doing things for everybody. She still doesn't. She must be. Oh look, I'm sure I seen her a few months ago, and I seen her down at Marrickville shopping about 6 months ago. She's lost grandchildren to the heroin and all sorts of things, but she plods along. And she's a real identity of Erskineville. She goes to the Catholic Church, and she's got a big family, and they love her, and everybody loves her. But what disappointed me when I went back recently was to see that Alan's Cake Shop. Alan's Cake Shop was when I went there, as a child. It was a big bakery, and old Mr. Allen used to own it, and it had, he used to make pies, and some were tuppence and some were fourpence, and you got little thin ones and big thick ones. And he had a conveyor belt that ran through the shop that you could watch him baking and take them off while you watched him. And then he extended his premises and made it to a big shop. Now his daughter Joyce, I think she may have passed on last year, won the Easter show for the icing, the best cakes, wedding cakes and that, for 30 years or something. And now I see now they've changed hands. And that would have been a shop that would have been Allen's for maybe 50, 60 years. And they had people came, if you were having a party, people would come from the northern and southern suburbs and ring up Allen's for their pastry, the vol events and all that sort of thing, you know. And they get their wedding cakes. And they were well known. They were so famous. When I went back a few months ago, the shop's still there, but somebody knew people. It wasn't the same.
What about the local police, seeing your father had...
Well, they were at Newtown.
Yes?
Yeah.
What can you remember about them?
I didn't know much about... I don't know anything about the local police, really. I don't think that I had much to do with it. I never was in trouble with them or had any reason for them to reprimand me or... I remember there was one policeman that they used to all be feared of called Long Tack Sam. He had big feet and he used to pin the kids' feet to the footpath and say, go home if you're out late.
He'd tread on their feet?
Tread on their foot, yeah. Yeah, and pin them down with his foot. And they called him Long Tack Sam because he had great big feet. But, and of course Bumper Farrell, the football, he was noted in the area in those days. So you were pretty frightened. You were pretty frightened to meet Bumper Farrell or Long Tack Sam. You kept out of the way. But I never had any desire to go. There was a lot of criminal element too.
Like who?
Oh yeah, well, you heard of, there was Chow Hayes was mentioned, and you heard a lot of underworld things mentioned, but you just be quiet.
Like, well, what kind of things?
Oh, you heard things like robberies, like robbing shops and things like that. But no one spoke. If you heard things like going down the rail at Alexandria and robbing the big rail carriages of maybe whatever goods they had on the goods yards, you know, busting into them and taking all the goods out of them. There were a lot of stolen goods sold in Erskineville. A lot of stolen goods. Like you only had to say, I want 2 jumpers, and you got them. Or you only had to say, I want it. And I mean, they were Fletcher Jones suits, and they were the best. Anything from a mink coat to a diamond ring to a needle to an anchor. They used to say you can go to the pub and buy what you like. And it was well known. In the Rose of Australia, you could buy your beans, your peas, your tomatoes, your pumpkin, your vegetables of one guy, and he had a set of scales. And if you went to the Erskineville Hotel for a beer, you could buy a suit, collar and tie, cardigan, whatever you wanted. But some of the people just did their shopping. There were a lot of raffles. People made money from raffles. Used to raffle lots of things. Like, you know, well, now you see sides of land, but now they might have raffled a leg of lamb, or people bought raffle tickets. They loved to gamble. So there was a bit of, no TAB, but they loved to gamble.
Would most people be happy to, would your family be happy to shop like at the pub, like to buy hot stuff, hot goods?
No, not really. No, not really. No, not really. No. My mother basically made what we wore and knitted. She did a lot of knitting, a lot of sewing. Although she worked, the day she was home, she couldn't make a frock in the day.
Did she work hard?
Oh yeah, very hard, yeah.
Was that recognised by your father?
Well, after he died, it was recognised by the family that she worked hard to support me to have everything, you know. Yeah.
So did your living standard go down after your father?
No, never.
She took on extra jobs?
Yeah, never went down in my life.
Really?
No.
But you would have been coming home to an empty house, I guess?
Yeah, that's what hurt, yeah, coming home and Mum at work, yeah. Yeah, but I used to get her tea ready and wait for her, and then the manager of the hotel that she worked at, the Erskineville, he knew me and he'd let me go around after school and stay there until it wasn't 10 o'clock, it was 6 o'clock closing. So I'd put the tea on, pop around and walk home with her. So we'd be all right, you know. Yeah, and we'd go to the movies together, or she'd take a couple of her friends, and then she married later on.
Josie, is there anything else you wanted to say? I'm just about out of questions.
No, done nothing particularly, no.
Anything I should have asked that I haven't?
I don't think so. I think you've covered the whole lot.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, that's
It's
all
been
right.
really helpful.
That's all right. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.